This amendment, I'd like to move to the heel of the amendments, please.
Without objection, to the heel. Next amendment.
Madam Speaker, members, Amendment 2 is the remaining amendment, so we are on the heel of the amendments.
Representative Alexander? Sanderson, excuse me. Representative Sanderson?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Amendment 2 to House Bill, or Senate Bill number 780. This amendment actually, this amendment would fix the bill, as far as I'm concerned, for my district. If we pass the amendment. But after I had the amendment drawn up, I remembered about the meeting we had back in January when we all went into this Supreme Court building. We discussed about how judicial districting was going to affect our districts, all of our districts, or a lot of us, 50+ members went in there. And that I remembered the feeling that I had, the almost violation I felt that they were affecting my district and I had no input whatsoever. And so this amendment would actually take me out of the equation if it were passed. But you know, they took a lot of you guys out of the equation. You know, the bill that was originally introduced, it affected basically every district in the state, all 31 districts. But they realized that after they did that, and we had our meeting in that Supreme Court building that day, they couldn't pass it because too many of us stood unified, hand in hand, arm in arm, stood unified against the bill. The people that constructed the bill decided to change it, where it only affects 6 districts. My district is one of those districts. Now, would it be quite fair if I were to introduce an amendment? If I were to introduce an amendment, take me out of that, would I be walking away from the other 5? I ask you guys this one thing. We stood united that day. We stood as one body. We were going to fight this judicial redistricting because it affected all of us. But now it doesn't affect you. I can opt myself out with this amendment. Is that right? I was against it that day, just like you were against it that day, and I'm against the bill now. Madam Speaker, I move to withdraw my amendment, and I ask each of you to vote this bill down.
Without objection, amendment number 2 withdrawn. Next amendment.
No further amendments, Madam Speaker.
Chairman Lundberg, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is an emotional issue for many people, and I understand that, and I get that, and I get that why. There was no original plan. A couple of months ago, we put out, we being many of us involved in this legislation, and requested input from DAs, public defenders, and judges on what would be the best plan in the state, because this has not happened in 30 years. And we got a great deal of input back. And what you have is, frankly, the culmination of those efforts. And it is not a major change in the judiciary. If you looked at the maps that I presented yesterday, and you look at the second or third one, you'll see that there's a lot in white, which are unchanged, and there are some in color. And why have those changed, and what has happened? Well, if you take a look, and I know I can't use maps for a prop, and I'm not going to, but if you take a look at those maps, and I'll give you a couple examples. The average multi-county district, the average size for a multi-county district is 157,000. In Northwest Tennessee, Dyer and Lake County as a single district have 46,000 people. So Weakley and Obion have 66. In a single county district, the average size of a single county district is 321,000 people. 321,000. Coffee County has 52,000 people. What this plan does is we've really stopped subsidizing some of that. It's as if, candidly, some of us had a district that had 8,000 or 10,000 people in it. And that's what this does, is it brings us back and fixes anomalies, micro districts that were created 30 years ago. Overall, the plan also takes us from 31 judicial districts to 29. That will save around $400,000, $500,000 a year. So, and let me tell you something that's really important, and I think a lot of people have had some misinformation on this. This is part one of a two-part plan. Over the summer, the AOC is going to work on judicial caseload, an awaited caseload study, and come out, and frankly, when we get back in January, because it's the allocation of resources that are critical. How many judges are needed where, and where is that? That's critical for the implementation of justice. So I want to tell you that this has been, I would love to say it's been worked out and everybody likes it, but clearly everybody in here knows that's not the case. But I will tell you that I have had more conversations with our Supreme Court Chief Justice, and I've learned to appreciate his guidance in a great deal. He's worked on this and agreed to it. The president of the Bar Association, the Judicial Conference, the Trial Judges Association. Did they like the idea months ago? No. Did anyone? No. No one likes to change. When we redistricted ourselves, when we went through redistricting, did we want to change our district? I would tell you no. This makes good policy. This makes good sense. And if we don't do it now, if you say, well, let's come back and do it next year, it'll be another 10 years. And 30 years ago, what happened with this is 30 years ago, some folks got together and said, I'm very comfortable with my district the way it is, just leave it alone. And that's why 30 years later, we have micro districts, and we're subsidizing them. And again, we need to set good policy, and I hope you will take the emotion out of that and focus on policy. And Madam Speaker, pending questions, I renew my motion.
Chairman Lundberg renews his motion. Discussion on the bill. Representative Matheny.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Folks, I found out about this plan about 5 minutes after I addressed the Public Defenders Conference in Kingsport, Tennessee. I received a courtesy call from the clerk to tell me that the Senate had released a plan and the House had nothing to do with it, and he wanted to give me some heads up. And that plan was atrocious. Since then, they've gone back and made some changes, I agree, and they've mitigated some of your problems. There's several questions that I've not been able to have answered. Number one, is our entities going to be, and this will be to the sponsor, I have some comments, but this will be a question to the sponsor if he'll please answer it. Is there anything in effect that will hold entities harmless that are currently in judicial districts that have sprung up over the last 30 years to support the activities of judicial district drug task forces, children's advocacy centers, and the actual judicial system itself? These people have building programs, they have staff, they have long-term financial obligations to their territories. Is anybody going to hold them harmless if they're overlapped with existing resources that already cover those? That is a question I would like to answer.
Sure. The expectation is nothing will happen with some of those because they have long-term contracts, i.e. CASA, with some of their facilities. So that will...
That's not the concern that's coming out of my district. Also, predictability in the process. When we redistricted, we had a full 2 years. Plus, we knew it was coming 8 to 10 years in advance. It was in our minds. We knew that as we were preparing for an election. Why force this down a branch of government's throat within 4 months? Now, I'm going to say I am from Coffee County. We do have a small district. But predictability in the process is what is needed here. When I speak to my DAs and my clerk and my folks in the judicial system in Coffee County, they understand that we're going to have a bigger district. They disagree with the fact that the rest of the state is subsidizing us. And I can back up those facts just in child support collections. We are much above the state average in many areas in our child support collections. That benefits the constituents because my folks have had a little bit more time to work on those. The caseloads are not necessarily any heavier. And I would also like to say, if we're going to come back and do phase 2 of this plan, which should actually be phase 1 in January, why don't we do that? Why make this change and then decide what changes we need? Why not do what we have to do in January, decide what changes we have to have made, then put some predictability in the process, let all the interested parties come forward, just like they do in the legislative redistricting process, put their plans forward. Let's be able to vote on them. Let's be able to debate on them. Let's exercise our authority as an equal chamber, not as a subservient chamber in the House or in the legislature. We are just as equal as the folks across the hall, and all we're doing is playing catch-up to nearly everything. This is another instance where we can exercise our authority to be independent legislators, represent our constituency, and not necessarily represent the Senate. And Comptroller study in 2009, just want to remind you, look at item 4, and it specifically says this is a study that our state authorized 3 years ago, and they say this is not needed. So we're telling the Comptroller's office they're wrong. We're telling the judicial branch, many of them, that they're wrong with their negotiations. We're telling the Senate, though, that they're right. That's who we're telling is right. Once again, I'm from Coffee County. Yes, I'm proud to be. Do we think there needs to be some changes? We don't know. We don't know till all the facts are done. Are we willing to make some changes once all the proper evidence is presented to us? Absolutely. If it's fair and it's equitable and everybody else in the state has to react to that, you better believe we're ready to react to that. And folks, I would ask that you please remember that you are elected independently, not in conjunction with a senator. You belong to a chamber that is autonomous. Believe it or not, it really is. You belong to a branch of government. Believe it or not, it is autonomous. You can do something without somebody else approving it first and exercise that authority. We don't do it often enough in this chamber. Thank you.
Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to speak long, but I'd appreciate if you'd pay attention while I am talking. This thing is based, what we've been looking at so far is really just all based on population. I want to compare a couple things on judicial districts. I live in the 13th judicial district. There's some more of you sitting in this chamber. It consists of 7 counties. Those 7 counties, each one of those counties have to elect a county mayor or county executive. They have to elect a sheriff. They have to elect a governing body called a county commission. I'm not counting the commissioners. Have to have a county clerk, a chancery court clerk. There's a clerk and master appointed by the chancellor. They all have a property assessor, a trustee, a register of elections, a register of deeds, and they have got a director of schools. 11 officials for each one of those counties. So this 13th judicial district has 77 elected officials or appointed officials in those 7 counties. That's got a population of 207,959 people. That's 2,701 people, individuals that are supporting each one of these appointed or elected officials. In contrast, you look at a single county district. I'll just go to our largest county. I'm certainly not picking on it, but Shelby County is a single district. It's got 11 officers that have to, I'm not counting city officials, 11 county officials that are appointed or elected. It's got 927,644 people. It's got 84,331 people supporting each one of those elected or appointed officials. It's all a scale of economy. I guarantee you, the sheriff in White County, one of my counties in this 13th district, he might have 20 deputies. I guarantee you the sheriff in Shelby County don't have 20 deputies because you can't take care of that many people. He's got a lot more people on the ground because he's got a larger population. Same thing with judicial districts. If we're thinking that something bigger is better, then we need to, and I'm not advocating this, don't anybody get nervous, but we may be willing to consider getting rid of some of our smaller counties and put them in a larger county. I don't think that's a smart thing to do. I'm not opposed to judicial redistricting, ladies and gentlemen. I agree with the sponsor. It's time we need to look seriously and do this. But I don't think we need to do it in a haphazard or piecemeal way. I think 2 of these districts, Judge Matheny, they're getting him twice. 2 of these are in his district. He and I share one of these. One of these districts, the 2 counties, 22 elected officials, 45,387 is a population, 2,063 people supporting each one of those individuals. It's lean and mean. There's not a lot of deputies. There's not a lot of assistant DAs, but it's lean and mean. It's one of the best ones in the state of collecting child support payments. We need to look at what the overall budget. All these other counties got multiple judges. This 2-county district has got 1 person serves as a chancellor, the criminal court judge, the circuit court judge. 1 person serves as that, where other counties have got 4 and 5 judges. 1 judge. Has anybody mentioned the financial budget side of this thing? It's all pointed to us on the population. And I'm not doing this because my sponsor is a sailor. Heck, I'm a sailor. I was in the branch of the Navy myself. The Navy's got all kinds of ships at sea right now, and a lot of them sitting in port. I have an 06. If they got a captain in charge, there may be an 06 on an aircraft carrier and got 5,000 people on that aircraft carrier. They may have an 06 on a submarine. He may have 125 people. If they both been in the Navy 25 years, they're on the same pay, ladies and gentlemen. One of them knows all of his men by name, by seeing them. The other one has to look at their ID to tell who they are. One of them knows how many children each one of them's got, if they got a child sick or if their wife's okay. It's a smaller unit. It's leaner, meaner. But the head of that unit, they're drawing the same pay. That's not what the argument is. It's all the support staff that supports them. There's no benefit to having a DA in a district so big and it takes him an hour and a half to get to a murder scene. There's no benefit to us. I'm telling you, at the end of the day, we would be much wiser in redistricting if we was creating 5 or 6 more DAs instead of trying to eliminate 2 DAs. I say let's look at this thing rationally. I support redistricting, but I want it done from Memphis to Mountain City. And let's do it in a logical way. And we need to make these districts more compact, a tighter nucleus, where a DA and their staff can investigate crime and prosecute crime. My DAs, these 2 DAs we're talking about between Judd and I, that DA himself goes to the, he goes to the grand jury to get an indictment and writes up the charges. These others, these larger ones, they may never see the grand jury. They got 5 or 6 grand juries. They can't be at all these places at one time. It'll be an assistant DA. These people are working DAs. I'm not saying the others don't work. They're more administrative. They ain't got time to get out on the ground like everyone else. But please, I'm asking you, please think this thing out before you vote. It's not saying that we're not for redistricting. I am for it. But I'm not for doing it in a piecemeal way. I'm just asking you, please don't vote to strip down my district and do it in a piecemeal way. Please vote no against this bill today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Lamberth.
Just a couple of questions for the sponsor, if I may. On the geography of this, I know we've mentioned that this is supposed to save some money by cutting down some positions and that type of thing. It's my understanding that for the judges, the assistant public defenders, assistant district attorneys, even the probation officers that travel throughout these districts, do they not get mileage and reimbursement for traveling these distances?
I would think so, but I'm not sure.
I think they do, and that's the reason I was asking. I know you said you'd kind of run the numbers on this, is what I had heard earlier, and that this was going to save money. If we are increasing the size geographically of these districts, is it not going to cost us money in paying these folks more mileage to travel all over the place?
I haven't calculated the mileage, but I think that'd be offset by clearly $500,000 a year.
Okay, and I don't know. That's the reason I was asking the question. And the only thing I was going to ask is that we've mentioned this caseload study to determine, which districts are heavily, have a heavy caseload, which ones do not, to try to mix this around. And I am fully in favor of that. Why wasn't that done on the front end of this to try to give us the numbers today when these districts were drawn? And I have no idea, but I'm just kind of curious why there wasn't something done on the front end to let us know those numbers.
Well, we've been going along, frankly, thinking that we had a weighted caseload study, even last year. And candidly, again, it was a comptroller who brought it to our attention that what we've been looking at as a weighted caseload study isn't valid. And let me explain that, if I may, to members. That means in my county, in Sullivan County, if an individual is stopped and arrested for a DUI, they may be charged with DUI, reckless driving, and another charge. My county may treat that as 3 different cases. In Tipton County, that same set of charges may be 1 case. So we're not looking at apples and apples. So that's why over the summer, the AOC, the comptroller, and others are going to look, and it's budgeted specifically to look at these, so that we come back and we are comparing apples to apples, because that, and you're leading into a great spot, which is that in my mind, the more critical part of this is part 2, where we look at the allocation of resources. Who needs more judges? And that's what is coming.
Yeah, and that's exactly along the lines of what I'm talking about, is that we're not talking about here putting 1 judge per county, 1 judge per 100,000 people, nothing like that. We really don't know. What if we get back this weighted caseload study and decide that the lines, if this passes today, are entirely wrong as to what the weighted caseload study is, and we have to go and try to change them again? I mean, shouldn't we need the weighted caseload study first?
No, I think we would have heard if there was dramatic changes that way, because again, we've worked this out with the Bar Association, the Judicial Conference, the Trial Judges Association, the AOC, so there are no giant red flags at all going in there. They've all come together, including our Supreme Court.
But I guess my only point is they don't know those numbers either, because the numbers, as you said, it's not apples to apples. Nobody's run these numbers. Nobody knows, the trial lawyers, the judges, other than just eyeballing it, exactly what that caseload is. And I appreciate your work on this. I know you've worked extremely hard to try to get a map that works. I'm just greatly concerned that if we change these lines and we put them as they are here, that we're still going to be coming back next year and we're going to have a caseload study that's still going to mush judges into different areas. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Correct, and thank you, but this has nothing, exactly as you said, to deal with caseloads, judges. That is not in the bill that is before you. If you want to take a look at and see what this is based on, and again, it's not a major change. What we're doing is frankly taking care of something that happened 30 years ago where we had micro districts or boutique districts, however you want to fashion that, very small ones subsidized by the rest of the state. And that's fine. I would argue to you that if you wanted to change this, we should probably say, let's create then 100 more micro districts if that's the philosophy we want to do. That's why it's not a major change. We're just frankly trying to get everyone back on the same par. This is not about the case load. That is not the bill before you, sir.
And my final question, and thank you for, again, educating me on just some of the reasonings behind this, because that's what I've been looking for quite some time right now. If we do not do this year, can we come back and do this next year or the next? Can these lines be drawn some other year besides right now, right here on the last day, potentially, of session?
Sure. Could it? Yeah, you could do it next year. When would it take effect? It'd take effect in another 10 years, which means that legislative body 10 years from now would have to take it, and that puts it back to now we've gone 40 years. And if they didn't have, and candidly, it's when we're to this point because 30 years ago the legislative body didn't take care of this. So we would just be moving that down the road to 40 or 50 years before redistrict.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Representative Sanderson.
If you could come back to me, Madam Speaker, I yield to Representative Wargo.
Representative Wargo, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Not sure why I'm being yielded to, but since I'm up, will the sponsor yield?
I yield.
Mr. Sponsor, can I ask where this idea that you brought of redistricting has come from, if I may?
Where did it originate?
Yes.
No. I mean, I've chatted with it over the summertime with various folks. Frankly, if you asked me a year ago, what is judicial redistricting, I would have told you I didn't know, or how many districts we had. Frankly, we had members of the judiciary who said, you know, we haven't done this in 30 years. Should you take a look at that? And frankly, as I heard that and I looked at it, yes, we need to take a look at that. We need to address this. We need to, candidly, quit punting it down the road and hoping that somebody will take care of this 10 years from now.
Thank you. And I'm not saying that I don't agree with you, but you know, this country does census every 10 years. And our population changes. I've heard him say that to the point before that 30 years ago we had 1-some million Tennesseans. We have 1-some million Tennesseans more now than we did back then. You know, they talk about the really good preachers that want to save lives and save souls. You got to be that great orator. You got to move them people. And you got to bring them down and you got to get them saved. Amen. It's late in the session. Some would lead me to believe that we are in our final hours. Many people are tired. I don't know if I can move you in any way today, and I'm not trying to get you at that altar. I'm trying to get you to make a decision. See, because this bill, this redistricting, affects a lot of lives and a lot of people. We get down into the weeds of this bill behind the judicial redistricting. There's many lives that are affected. Federal government monies are affected. And as my friend from over in West Tennessee has said before, we embarked and we heard from everybody at the very beginning, I'm against it, I'm against it, I'm against it. It reminds me of the story of 1765 with the Stamp Act, when everybody was going to be affected, so everybody rose up against it. So what did we do? We tapered it back. We tapered it back to steal some words from my good friend here that says the 1%ers don't matter. We don't listen to the voice of the 1%ers. So what we've done is we've come here and we take this redistricting, and we've made it so it doesn't affect many of you. So your attitude now can be, well, guess what? It doesn't affect me, so I guess I'm okay with it. You know, I would be better off with a plan if we would come back with a plan. If we start this thing next year and we put something in place that we know that every 10 years maybe we'll look at this. We have to run every 2 years. We know that. There are things in place. Let's put something in place. So there's a standard. One of the key things that I think that we're leaving out is a study that was done by the Comptroller's Office not many years ago. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this report. And when it came back, guess what? They said we need to do nothing. Things are in order. Things are in place. Members, I stand here today in the final hours where, yes, you must make this decision. And I know a lot of us are sitting in our chairs because this is a very difficult decision. Some of us don't even want to cast the vote for us. I encourage you, I remind you, if we do nothing, if we do not pass this bill, everything will be okay. We can come back and we can set a structure. We can put something in place. We can build upon a foundation that we can start. And we can say every 10 years or every 5 years or every 20 years, whatever the case may be, we can have that structure in place. With that, I humbly ask you to vote no on this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Sanderson, you yielded to Representative Wargo. You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will the sponsor yield?
I yield.
Representative Lundberg, Chairman Lundberg, I had several questions, and I'm looking at my questions and I'm thinking, I don't really want to ask you the questions now because, to me, the bill is not about the merits that you've been talking about. It really has nothing to do with what you're talking about because the bill's just really a terrible bill. It's a poorly thought out bill. But I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this, when we leave here, when we leave this session today, I don't want this session, this moment, to be remembered as the last day or the last fleeting moments. I want this session and this bill and this vote, it means much, much more. Representative in the well did not answer Representative Wargo's question when asked where did the bill originate. He did not. He sidestepped the question. He did not answer it. He talked about a lot of other things. This bill, friends and colleagues, came from the Senate. Plain and simple. It was drawn in the upper chamber. My friends, we are the people's chamber. We are the people's chamber. They are the upper chamber. Now, I'm telling you something. We've been told from the start of this session when we were going to begin and when we're going to end. They say they're going to leave us here if we go on long. They're leaving today, and it doesn't matter come what happens. We could be by ourselves. They have been dictating to us from the get-go how this session runs. And let me tell you something. This bill was crammed down our throat by the good representative up here on the well, but he did not draw the bill. The bill was drawn over there. It was given to us and said you can like it or you can lump it. Now, friends, let's draw a line in the sand today and say we stand united as the people's chamber. We will not be told anymore how long to stay. We will not be told how we redistrict our own districts. Friends, I ask you, let's say it. Let's say it because we've all thought it. Let's say it. vote no on the bill because it's not our bill.
Representative Lundberg, you asked to be recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would just like to point out that every bill that we have ever dealt with originates in one house or the other. So, and to become law, it passes both houses. So we have had ideas that originate here, they have had ideas that originate there, and if we don't believe in this, then we don't carry that legislation. It's as simple as that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Swan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move previous question.
Previous question has been called for. Is there objection? There's objection. We're on the board. Those in favor of previous question vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, Carter. Camper, aye. Lambert, aye. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Aye, 68, 25 nay.
Previous question prevails. Chairman Lundberg, did you seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There is a lot of emotion in this for a lot of folks. And I want to toss to you, as we push the button, it is one of those where we can look and say, my dear friend is affected by this, so I'm going to stick there. But I ask you, because we are here to set policy and to make decisions based on what our voters sent us here to do, that you make that decision based on policy. Is it the right thing to do? 30 years ago, when we were last districted, there were 1.7 million fewer citizens in the state. Williamson County was so small, it had to be lopped in with Hickman, Lewis, and Perry. It was one of the smallest in the state. The growth has been explosive. Now with this plan, it's its own legislative district. Ladies and gentlemen, wherever your emotion is, I ask you to vote on policy, and I thank you.
All those in favor of Senate Bill 780, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their votes? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Aye, 28, 66 nay, one present not voting.
Senate Bill 780 having failed to receive the constitutional majority, I re-refer it to calendar and rules. No? Is there a motion to reject? Representative Matheny?
I move to reject the bill, Madam Speaker.
There is a motion to reject. Pursuant to Rule 63, that motion will lie over until the next legislative day. Mr. Clerk, place on the heel of the next regular calendar. Next bill.
Madam Speaker,